Good morning. We are here to present the Brewery Analysis Report presented to you by C.Martinez and A.Saxena. As we started our project, we looked at the global craft beer market, which is growing very rapidly. Today, the value of the craft beer market is about $85 billion. And as we evaluate the market, we are assigned to look at the two important variable in the beer market, which is the alcoholic beverage content and also the bitterness level, and understand what the relationship between the two variable is. We were really tasked to understand what the rising consumer preference is expected to be the key aspect of the market growth. So when we started our initiative, we started looking at really understanding the data, drilling down into the data to understand the relationship and see if we can figure out some kind of indicator which will have a direct impact on what consumer preference really is. We divided our project into a few different phases. Our first phase was really analyzing the data set of the brewery and the beer market in the United States, also cleaning the data, making sure the data which we are going to evaluate is clean and ready for us to analyze. And then we did some computation, looked at the statistic values, and came up with our conclusion. The first phase is analysis of the data, and we started our journey of analyzing the data by looking at how many breweries are present in the United States. So that was really our first question. We found that the data which was provided to us had 50 states. In addition to the 50 states, we also had one additional state, which was DC. So if you look at the graph, we see all the 51 states provided to us by the data set. And then we actually merged the brewery and the beer data to make sure that we have the combined data, the consolidated data for us to do our analysis on. So we combined the beer data and the brewery data and then published the first 6 observations. The first 6 observations and the last 6 observations to make sure we actually got all our data in. And looking at our data, if you see, we found that the data merge was complete and was proper. The next step was really cleaning the data. We wanted to make sure the data was clean, so we actually looked at the NA values, not applicable values here. So the NA values for column AB were 62, and we found there were a lot of NAs in the column IBU. So the bitterness value had about 1,005 NA values. So once we looked at the NA values and where they were in each column, then we started our computation. In this, we actually looked at the median alcohol level for bitterness and also the alcohol content, and we plotted some bar charts so you can look at easily visualize the data to understand what our median alcohol content and median international bitterness content is. And we actually displayed that in 2 different colors. For alcohol, we picked pink, and for bitterness, yellow, so we can actually visualize our data set. And then we actually looked at which state has the maximum alcoholic beer. So as we were analyzing our data and we were trying to understand what the levels are in each state, but also which has the highest level. So we found that, to our surprise, we found that the alcoholic beer and the most bitter beer, both were in Colorado. So clearly there is a association we are looking to see as we are continuing on our search for the answer. But we are kind of leaning towards that there is some kind of association between the alcohol level and the bitterness, as we see that the state is Colorado here and one state with the highest levels. And then we went to the statistic analysis. We actually ran our statistical measures, the summary data, and we saw that there was mean and median, and also we looked at the minimum and max value. So we see that min and max range seems to be reasonable because it's really from 0.001 to 0.128. It seems like we have enough range here. and the median and mean seems to be pretty similar, 0.05, 6 and 0.059. Again, we're kind of leaning towards looking at there is a strong relationship between the ABV and IBU, the bitterness and the alcohol content. So in conclusion, we actually ran some scatter plot. We wanted to see what the data visually is telling us. And as we looked at the data on the graph, we see that there is a strong correlation between ABV and IBU. So the alcohol level and the bitterness has a linear graph, a linear relationship, and the concentration of the data set is on the lower side of the graph. So if you look at the bitterness and lower alcohol is where the population data sits and resides. And as you go to the higher bitterness and higher alcohol level, we see very scattered data elements there. So in conclusion, what we realized that multiple questions which we asked from the data, it all indicated towards the fact that there is a strong relationship between the lower bitterness and the lower alcohol level. So we can really strongly conclude by doing our analysis here with the data that the rising consumer preference is for flavored, which means lower bitterness, and low alcohol beer is expected to be the key aspect for the market growth. With that, we conclude. Thank you for the opportunity.